If we could get everyone to come on in and get a seat, we'll get started. Did you lose something? Good evening, everyone. Good-looking crowd. Appreciate everybody coming out on a Saturday night. Going to hear from some great candidates. And let me start. My name is Jack Morgan. I'm the 9th District Chairman of the Republican Party. Thank you. Let me start by saying to all of our Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor candidates, welcome to the Fighting Ninth. Now, to the people that really matter to me, to all of our local 9th District patriots, all of the liberty-defending, Tea Party, conservative Republican, grassroots activists, God bless you because you are what matters. While the candidates and party leaders may be on the stage tonight, remember, all of us, from party leadership to elected officials, serve at your will and only with your support. Never let anyone forget it. It's about you. And now a brief word to our candidates, if I can take a moment. I find it very fitting that you're here today, March 23rd, on the 238th anniversary of that great Virginian Patrick Henry's famous speech, "Give me liberty or give me death." In it, he spoke so eloquently of the choices our founding fathers faced, and he made it clear that given every other option, he chose liberty. While times have changed and there are many issues facing our Commonwealth and nation, no other issue was or is more important than personal freedoms and responsibilities. At every opportunity, find private sector, free market answers to our economic problems. This is to all of our candidates. Fight to keep the federal government and even some misguided Virginia officials out of our private business and out of our gun cabinets. Let our job creators actually create jobs, and only when necessary, to defend the most defenseless among us should you look to government for solutions that the people can do better. I'll try to make it as clear as possible. Free, honest citizens do not need or want government control in our lives. Two of you will leave our convention on May 18th as our candidates. And I make this pledge to you. I promise you that no other district will work harder and deliver more than the 9th District. What I ask of you, that's right, applaud for yourself, it's you guys, that's right. What I ask of the two that come out of that and all of the candidates that may run in the future, I ask this of you, that you keep liberty at the forefront of everything you do. Here in the Fighting Ninth, we will support liberty, vote for liberty, and even fight for liberty. And we ask as Republican candidates and elected officials that you do the same. Now let's get started with our program. We'll start with our invocation. If everyone would please rise. Mike Honecker, Senior Pastor, River of Life Church in Dublin, Virginia.
Let me remind you this evening, the word invocation makes a reference to the act of invoking God's name. And wasn't it a great tragedy not that long ago to see there was a political party, I won't mention which one, but it wasn't ours, that actually opposed the idea of invoking the name of God. In fact, they booed him on the floor of their own convention. But one of the reasons I am a Republican is because I know that we believe tonight that we are one nation under God. And it was President Reagan who said, if we ever stop being one nation under God, we will be one nation gone under. And so let's invoke his name tonight and even pray in the name of Jesus Christ as we pray tonight and ask his blessing upon this gathering. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, it is in the name of Jesus Christ that we pray tonight. Unashamedly, unreservedly, we invoke the name of Jesus Christ as we pray. And God, we ask you to just let your presence be felt in this place. May your Spirit abound, and may we be civil, may we be polite, and may we be professional one with another. But let us not compromise or negotiate our principles, our values, and everything that we hold dear and believe in tonight, Father. For we know that our rights come from you and not from government. We know that you have called each of us to the kingdom for such a time as this. And so we ask you to strengthen us and give us a spirit of determination. And God, I thank you for each man and each woman that has waded into this fray for freedom and for faith and for what is right. And I ask your hand of blessing and provision and protection upon each of them. Father, they have answered the call as Isaiah answered thousands of years ago when you asked the question, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And Father, I thank you tonight. There are men and women even today, even in the midst of the turmoil and the tribulation, there are men and women today who are stepping up and saying, here am I, God, send me. And so, Father, we ask you to send men and women of principle, men and women of value and courage to lead in our government. We are reminded tonight that our government is not a coincidence, but we have a legislative, a judicial, and executive branch that models what the Word of God tells us. You're our judge, you're our lawgiver, and you are our king, and it's not a mistake. So God, give us wisdom and courage, and lead, guide, and direct us in paths of righteousness and wisdom and strength. And we ask all of this as we pray tonight in the name that remains above every name, the name of Jesus Christ. And everyone said, amen. May God bless America.
Thank you, Mike. Awesome. All right, remain standing as we'll have Delegate Israel O'Quinn from the 5th District here to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If I could get any of my fellow veterans out there, just raise up your hand, like for to recognize you, Mike. I know you want to just give them a big hand. Thank you so much for your service. Delegate O'Quinn.
Please join me in honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Israel. As my kids say at the end of the pledge, amen. And now we'll have the reading of the Republican Creed by Michelle Jenkins, 9th District State Central member and former 9th District Chair.
Good evening. You're a good-looking crowd. It is truly a pleasure and honor for me to share with you tonight our Republican Creed, which is what we believe. We believe that the free enterprise system is the most productive supplier of human needs and economic justice. We believe that all individuals are entitled to equal rights, justice, and opportunities and should assume their responsibilities as citizens in a free society. We believe that fiscal responsibility and budgetary restraints must be exercised at all levels of government. We believe that the federal government must preserve individual liberty by observing constitutional limitations. We believe that peace is best preserved through a strong national defense. And we believe that faith in God, as recognized by our founding fathers, is essential to the moral fiber of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Now I'd like to recognize, I know I've seen, obviously, Delegate O'Quinn, if you'll stand up, and Delegate Ann B. Crockett-Stark. There we are. I'd like to also point out that, unfortunately, stand up a minute, as I call her Annie B. I hope you're okay with that. She's decided that this is her last term and she's not running, and I think we should just give her a big round of applause for serving us so diligently. The most upset I've been with our House until recently was when they moved her out of my district. We love you. Thank you so much for your service. I hope I didn't miss, if there was another General Assembly member that came in late, I apologize. If you are, stand up. But now I'd like to recognize any local officials, sheriffs, Commonwealth's attorneys, everybody who holds local office in your local counties and cities, stand up and be recognized. I know my sheriff's here. See several. Very good. Thank you all so much for your service. And our Republican Party leaders, state central members, local unit chairs, please stand up so we can recognize you. I see several here. We have great, great leadership in this district. I am blessed to have literally the best people I've ever served with me. So thank you so much. And now we're going to have some remarks from our new RPV Executive Director, who I would love to add happens to be from the 9th District himself, Mr. Anthony Reedy.
Greetings from the RPV and Chairman Pat Mullins. It's great to see so many wonderful people out here in the 9th District and to really be back home for me. As many of you know, I grew up in Grayson County and had the pleasure of working 5 wonderful years with State Delegate Annie B. Crockett-Stark. So it's good to be home and see so many wonderful friends. Thank you all for your interest and engagement and participating in the political process that we have here. We've got a great group of candidates, any of whom will add strength to our ticket, with Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli running for governor. And we're looking forward to having a wonderful convention in May 17th and 18th, and coming out as a united and strong party. For those of you who plan to attend the convention, and I encourage all of you to attend the convention and participate, you can go online to our website, rpvconvention.com, to find out all the information, whether it's about when your local units are meeting so you can file to be a delegate, or if it's about logistics of the event, parking, hotels, all those things, or if it's to find out information about some of the events surrounding the convention, whether it's our Commonwealth dinner or our breakfast. All that information can be found online at rpvconvention.com. Again, thank you, and let's look forward to a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for coming down. Now I'm going to turn the evening over to our chair of the debate, who also happens to be the unit chair for Washington County. He's done a fantastic job. Let's give him a big hand as he comes up. He's put all this together. Richard Macbeth.
Well, welcome everyone, including those who are watching us over on the internet at this time on va9gop.org, to the Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center here in Abington. And want to thank everyone for coming to hear the candidates as they're running for the Republican ticket for the Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor of Virginia this year. Our debate committee has worked very hard and to put on a very professional debate for you tonight. This time, I'd like to introduce our debate moderator for tonight's debate. Steve Hawkins grew up in Rogersville, Tennessee, and is a graduate from East Tennessee State University, ETSU. He began working at WCYB-TV during his junior year of college and remained there for 35 years as news director and anchor. Steve joined Bristol Broadcasting in 2011 and began producing the Steve Hawkins Show on Super Talk 92.9 WFHG in October 2011. In addition to hosting the morning talk show, The Steve Hawkins Show, weekday mornings from 6 to 9, he is also the news director for 4 Bristol broadcasting stations, WXBQ, Electric 94.9, Z-Rock, and Super Talk 92.9. He's a adjunct professor at ETSU for more than 25 years. Steve regularly teaches on news reporting and produces on broadcast management. He co-wrote a textbook with Dr. Teresa Keller from Emory and Henry College in 2001. The news writing and reporting textbook has been used with 40 colleges and universities in 20 states and is currently in its third edition. Steve and his wife Tracy live in Bristol. They have a daughter Jennifer who lives in Bristol with her husband Nathaniel, and they're now the proud parents of their first grandson who just came the last couple of days. Mother and son is doing great, and she's home today. Without further ado, I introduce you to your moderator, Steve Hawkins.
Good evening, folks and candidates. Welcome to Southwest Virginia. Mr. Bell, Mr. Obenshain, would you join me on the platform, please? I imagine this is the first debate that you have been involved in where the word fight was used 3 times before the debate as both a verb and an adjective. But welcome to the Fightin' Ninth. We're glad you're here. I don't think it's necessary to tell you about the rules other than to say the candidates will have time for opening and closing statements. They will have the opportunity to ask a question of one another, and we will time their responses as we move through the evening. But first up, and we will take turns in the way they respond this evening. First up, each candidate has 3 minutes for an opening statement, and we'll begin with Mr. Bell. Oh, pardon me. If you'll hang on and have a seat 1 sec. We do have a special welcoming video that I failed to introduce. Could we have that, please?
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all ready for a good debate. As a party, we're very lucky that we have so many good candidates running for office. I'm sorry for not being able to join you in person, but look forward to seeing many of you at the state convention in May and everyone on the campaign trail over the next few months. As you all know, I'm running against Terry McAuliffe, and it's going to be a tough race. A tough race because every liberal in America wants to defeat our ideals and our message. But we have a weapon that not even Bill and Hillary's special interest money can buy: our grassroots teams throughout Virginia. We already have an office open in Abingdon, and we'll be opening more as the campaign continues to progress. These offices are our hubs, but the real work happens with you in the field. I need you to talk to your neighbors, your friends, your family. This election will be won door by door, voter by voter, and we need your help today. We can't sit back and wait until the fall. We need your help today. Terry McAuliffe is the former chairman of the National Democrat Party, so it's safe to say that it's going to be a clear choice between him and me. I don't often agree with Brian Moran, but when Terry was running for governor in 2009, Brian Moran said, quote, "We need a fighter, not a fundraiser," unquote. Well, I agree with Brian, and I'm glad to tell you that I'm a fighter, as I've consistently fought for pro-growth, pro-jobs policies for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. When Terry McAuliffe brings his slick style to the Fighting Ninth, ask him, "Terry, where do you stand on coal? Terry, where do you stand on our way of life?" He won't tell you, but know this: Terry McAuliffe opposes coal, opposes the way of life here in the Ninth that fuels much of America. The Obama administration and their EPA would love nothing more than to establish an anti-coal beachhead right here in Virginia. I'll fight to make sure that doesn't happen, but I can't do it without you. That's why I need you to get involved with our campaign, as you can sign up to volunteer by visiting our website, which is www.cuccinelli.com, or stopping by one of our offices like the one in Abingdon. Thank you all for coming out today. I hope we have a lively debate between our candidates, and I'll see you at the convention.
Okay, Seating and questions are determined by a pre-debate drawing, and in that drawing we determined that Mr. Bell would have his opening statement first. I ask you to withhold your applause until the closing statements, please. Mr. Bell.
Well, good evening. My name is Rob Bell, and I'm running for Attorney General, and let me tell you why. I believe that our Constitution, this is our Constitution is in grave peril. And it's in grave peril because Barack Obama does not accept the limitations it puts on him. He just doesn't. And ladies and gentlemen, if you elect me, I'll wake up each day and I'll spread the newspapers out and I'll go through them and I'll say, what did Barack Obama do last night? Is it constitutional? And if not, what are we going to do about it? But we can't stop there. It's not enough to play defense. And the reason, of course, is we have given up too many of our liberties already. I hope you understand just how bad the Obamacare decision was. It's not just about health care. It's not just about health insurance. Even if Congress came in and repealed the entire Obamacare law, that Supreme Court decision would still be there. And it would be a roadmap to the next Congress to say, if we want to take away their liberties and make them do something, all we got to do is call it a tax. So here's what we have. This is the third great expansion of federal power in the history of the Republic. After the Civil War was the first, the New Deal was the second. This was the third. It happened over the last 4 years, and it happened on our watch. On our watch. We have a moral responsibility to win our liberties back. It's not enough to play defense. We have got to win our liberties back. Now, I think we have a moral obligation in addition to give our kids the same Constitution that our parents gave to us. That's our moral obligation. Now, if you want to know how hard I'm going to fight for this Constitution, I just ask you to look at the Property Rights Amendment that was on the ballot last year. Because the story of that was the Supreme Court said, we're going to take away your property rights. We're going to let the government use eminent domain to take property from one person and give it to another. Not for a road or for a school, but just because we like that owner better. So here's what we did. In 2007, I had a constitutional amendment that would have put your property rights back in the Constitution where they belonged. It failed. It failed by 4 votes. Came back again in 2009. This time it didn't get out of committee. Tried again in 2010. It didn't get out of the House. It was deferred. And if you know your parliamentary procedures, that means we're going the wrong direction. Every year we're getting further and further from success, and people did say, oh, come on, move on. It will never pass. It will never work. Find something else to do with your time and your energy, but that's not what we did. In 2011, we formed a big coalition. I was in the House. Mark was in the Senate. We had a Democrat. We put his name on the top because we thought that could get us the 1 vote we needed, and it did. And it did. It passed the Senate by 1 vote. We passed it again the next year. It got to you all, and you all passed it. Thank goodness. Thank you for passing that amendment. Put the constitutional rights back in the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, it will be a long, hard fight to win our Constitution back, but it's a fight that we have an obligation to wage and an obligation to win. I welcome your questions tonight, and thank you for coming out. Thank you.
Mr. Bell, thank you. Thank you very much. Mark Obenshain, you have 3 minutes.
You can tell Rob and I are both lawyers. We're congenitally unable to speak sitting down. It is great to be with you. Let me just first of all say thank you to the organizers. This is a fantastic setting, absolutely fantastic setup, and a great opportunity for us to exchange thoughts and ideas with you here in the Fighting Ninth. I want to tell you, Rob is right. We do have a president who is unrestrained by constitutional limitations, and he has shown it over and over again. And I thank God that we have had an Attorney General in the Commonwealth of Virginia for the past 4 years who has had the guts, the courage, and the determination to stand up and fight what the President is trying to impose upon us here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm thankful that he stood up and was the first Attorney General in America to stand up against Obamacare. I'm thankful that he had the courage to stand up against an overreaching environmental protection agency that cares more about scoring political points than it cares about the environment, whether it is stormwater, whether it is agriculture, and in the most personal way here in Southwest Virginia, whether it is the war on coal. We have got to continue to stand up and fight those fights. I want to tell you that when we lost this election,
this past November, it highlighted for me the importance of making sure we've got an Attorney General who is going to fight, who's got the experience and the ability to stand up and take on an overreaching federal government. I have for 25 years been fighting big fights, and let me tell you, these are the greatest fights of our generation that are being fought right now in federal courts across America, and we must continue to fight those fights. I have, for 10 years in the General Assembly, been recognized for my efforts and successful efforts in standing up for our rights and for our values. I've been recognized by the Commonwealth's attorneys and for the sheriffs for standing up for public safety. I've been recognized for the Farm Bureau, which led the fight on property rights, for fighting since 2005 with Rob and Ken Cuccinelli to make sure that your property rights and mine are protected. Been recognized by the Family Foundation for standing up for our family values. And I've been recognized by the Chamber of Commerce for standing up for our free enterprise system. I want to tell you, we have got to have an Attorney General who has fought some of these fights before. I've handled somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 200 constitutional cases during the course of my career. I'm ready to fight back. I'm ready to stand up for your Second Amendment rights. I hope that you will support me in my bid for Attorney General. I look forward to seeing you in Richmond. Thanks so much.
We have 5 questions this evening that we'll pose to each of the candidates. They will have 90 seconds to respond. Mr. Obenshain, you get the first question. Presently, the Attorney General only has jurisdiction to originally prosecute specific criminal violations of Virginia's law. Do you believe that a change to the law should be made so that the Attorney General would have concurrent jurisdiction with the local Commonwealth's attorneys to prosecute any criminal violation? For example, if a local Commonwealth's attorney refuses to prosecute a case, do you believe the Attorney General should be allowed to review and prosecute that case if it is so warranted?
Let me give you an example. I live in Harrisonburg. This fall, we had a situation in which a young man was engaged in collecting voter registration forms. He happened to be a Republican contractor, sadly. And it turned out that he apparently dumped about 8 to 12 voter registration forms in a dumpster. And there was an effort by the Democrats to demand that the Attorney General of Virginia step in and prosecute this young man's actions. Just so happened that the Democrats have opposed efforts to allow the Attorney General of Virginia to step in and prosecute acts such as violations of our election laws. That is a good example of a situation and a case in which it makes good sense for our Attorney General to have the ability to step up and prosecute. In our case, we've got a Commonwealth's attorney who is darn good and darn tenacious, and she is prosecuting this young man, and he stands accused of multiple felonies. You know, I've got a lot of confidence in our local law enforcement, and I've got a lot of confidence in our Commonwealth's attorneys around the Commonwealth of Virginia. I don't think that the Attorney General ought to have blanket authority to step in and prosecute every crime in a case in which there's some indication or some belief on his part that the prosecutor has
Mr. Obenshain, I apologize.
has failed to prosecute, but there are cases where it makes absolutely great sense.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bell, it was a long question. Would you like it repeated? Okay.
So I actually worked as a prosecutor for 5 years. It was Orange County, I always say 1 high school, 5 stoplights. And we had 2 people in our office, the Commonwealth's attorney and me, and we handled every case that came through the door. So everything from the homicide to the shoplifting, everything was in our purview. I think that for the everyday cases, the shoplifting cases where there's a fight at the bar on Saturday night, where there's disorderly conduct, I think those are properly handled by the local Commonwealth's attorney. He knows best what the people are used to. He knows what the juries will do locally. He knows the judge best. I think for those cases it works just fine. There are some cases, though, where we think the Attorney General, for lots of reasons, should be allowed to have some kind of jurisdiction. And if you look at the Code of Virginia, there's a list. And it's a list of crimes you would think would make sense. So certain things on the internet, certain cases where it makes sense to have the Attorney General step in. One of the ones we're looking at right now is voter fraud. And the issue would be that there might be a voter fraud where the person who is the Commonwealth's attorney might have, Commonwealth's attorneys are elected officials, especially in smaller communities. You might already know the person. It might be very hard for that to be prosecuted. I had a bill this year that would make it a jurisdiction of the Attorney General to actually prosecute voter fraud cases, so we could step in where there's a voter fraud case and say, under current law, you have to be invited, which makes no sense. We'll let you step in. That bill is on the governor's desk right now. I'm hopeful he will sign it. If you like the idea of the Attorney General doing voter fraud, please contact the governor and tell him to sign it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. If you want to just remain there,
Okay.
We'll direct the second question to you first. It is, presently, Virginia has no law making it illegal to possess or carry a firearm on public college, university campuses. However, all public colleges and universities have adopted regulations prohibiting the possession of firearms, even those carried by concealed permit holders on their premises. Do you agree with these regulations? Are the regulations lawful in spite of Virginia having no explicit law prohibiting firearms from public college and university campuses?
Yeah, I have voted for and opposed the idea that if you have a concealed carry permit, you shouldn't be allowed to carry on college campuses. And I think it's no great shock that some of the biggest tragedies we've had, and we all know what we're talking about, have been in places where people are known not to have a firearm. Nobody. I mean, the bad guy goes onto the campus and he can know for sure that absent the university police, there's nobody else. Nobody else. I think that's a mistake. I think that a law that would say that if you have a concealed carry permit, you can carry on a place like a college campus, a public campus, is something that I would support. I've supported it in the past. I would support it again. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Obenshain, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I've got it. Thank
Okay.
you very much. You know, every couple of years there are a handful of bills that are introduced in the General Assembly attempting to address situations where there really is no problem. Banning handguns in areas in which there's no evidence that handguns are a problem. And, you know, I'm not concerned about the law-abiding citizen. You know, the people who obey these laws are not going to be the people who are going to be committing these crimes. And as a matter of fact, all you have to do is look here locally at the Appalachian School of Law shooting, in which my understanding is one of the first people on the scene who was able to have a role in bringing this to a stop was an off-duty police officer or a student who had been a police officer who had a weapon in his car. I think that it makes no sense to adopt these laws that are going to make people feel good, some people, not a lot of people, by modifying the rights of law-abiding citizens. You know, we've got urban college campuses around Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, and if we pass a law like that, how do you enforce it? Do you enforce it with respect to people driving down Grace Street right through the middle of campus? I don't think it makes sense. And I do believe that we ought to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to continue to bear arms.
Question 3 goes to you first, Mr. Obenshain. How will you deal with the EPA to allow Virginia to produce more coal and gas that would give us more jobs and also limit the closure of coal-fired plants and boilers that already exist? Would you consider bringing court cases for these big job issues against the EPA and federal government?
Yes, without a doubt, absolutely. The Environmental Protection Agency is an agency out of control. Lisa Jackson, the former administrator of the EPA, early in the Obama administration, went to Europe and actually shared with a group of European leaders what she viewed as her job. She told them, I have 16,000 employees who stand ready to fundamentally transform the American economy. Got that? The American economy. I thought it had something to do with clean air and clean water. But her actions have consistently, and the actions of the EPA have consistently demonstrated that that is not the case. And they have consistently violated federal law in imposing regulations and in taking positions that are detrimental to the way of life in Southwest Virginia, that are detrimental to the rights and the ability of ratepayers to be able to continue to be able to afford electricity across the Commonwealth and across the United States. The Cuccinelli administration and other attorneys general have backed down the EPA on no less than 6 different occasions upon which they have engaged in or adopted regulations that are clear violations of federal law. Most recently, the transboundary emissions standards, which sought to regulate emissions crossing state lines, however they were going to do that. And we have got to continue to push back against the EPA and challenge these illegal regulations.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bell?
Yes, again. I mean, does everybody understand how different their vision of America is? Now, Southwest Virginia happens to be ground zero for the changes they're trying to make to the country. But their goal is to fundamentally transform our country into something that it's not, which is a European socialist state. And the way they're going to do it, they can't find a way to make the wind power cheap enough. The solar power just isn't cheap enough. It can never be competitive with coal. And so what do? Well, you make coal more expensive. It's the same thing they're doing in other aspects. Virginia has a cheap labor regime. There's a reason why we do things here they can't do in California. Again, do you make California more competitive? No. You make us less competitive. We need to fight every single step of this. There might be some groups that you can meet them halfway and come up with a compromise. It's clear that this administration is not it. So yes, fight every single step of the way. Fight them here, fight them up in Fairfax. One of the big wins that Ken had was a water case in Fairfax County. Keep fighting, and you can work with the other attorneys generals across the country where they have a win, learn from it, where they lose, figure out what they did wrong, but we should work together to fight every step of the way, absolutely.
Thanks. Mr. Bell, the next question is for you first. The Center for Public Integrity released a report detailing the risk of corruption and lack of accountability in all 50 states. The findings of this report should concern anyone who believes state governments are transparent and free of corruption opportunities. Virginia failed miserably. We're 4th from the bottom and received 9 Fs. What steps can Virginia take to correct this deficiency?
Okay. So there are some things we have done, and surely there are some more that we can do. The first would be, of course, make sure it is easy to follow the money. So you need to be absolutely clear when we get a donation from somebody, where it comes from, when it arrives, how quickly we get it, so you can see if it's impacting our votes. On that, we're actually doing pretty well. If you look at the online, you could go right now and look up every person that's given me more than $100, the same for Mr. Obenshain, and you can say, oh my goodness, in September of 2007, there was a sudden change in his votes, and what do you know, in October of that year, there was a sudden change in donations. You can track it just the way you'd want to do. The second, we need to have as many open meetings as we can. In other words, the less that's done in the back room back here, the more you can be confident that what you're seeing is what's actually happening. And so a few years ago, we changed the rules to make sure that all of our votes are online. It doesn't sound important, but I mean, it's hard for you to get to Richmond. It's harder for you to watch. I mean, there's some video of some of it, but if you want to see how we vote in committees and in subcommittees, you can do it now because that's online. I think that's the step where we can do better, where we can do more to open up our meetings to make sure that if there's something happening, if there's some issue that you care about, and you know who I am and you've checked my donations, but you want to see the negotiations, I think it's important we do more we have for open meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obenshain?
A couple of things. First of all, there are several different areas in which we need to be vigilant in making sure that we're transparent. Number one is in the administrative functions of the state government and local government. I think we need to do a better job of giving voters and citizens access to information about the expenditure of monies, down to access to checkbooks and check registries. And we're doing a better job with this. There's no reason with the electronic resources that we have that we can't do that. Number two, Rob mentioned Sunshine. We, I think, do things right in the Commonwealth of Virginia with respect to election finance. There is no contribution that is given to candidates in Virginia that doesn't go up on the internet, and it should. And if we are receiving contributions, you ought to know about it. And we need to make sure that there is local accountability and that local contributions go up there as well. Third, we need to make sure that that people are involved in and have the opportunity to be involved in the legislative process. We pass a budget every 2 years. Very seldom do legislators really even have a meaningful chance to read the budget before it's passed, because it comes out minutes before we vote on it. You ought to have the chance to be able to read it and talk to us about it before we vote on it. Those are a few of the things we need to do.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we'd like to give each of you the opportunity to ask a question of the other. And Mr. Obenshain, if you would like to ask Rob Bell a question.
Oh, let's go first. That's a good one.
Sure.
That's a real hard one.
Rob, you know, as we travel around the Commonwealth of Virginia and attend these functions, we talk about a lot of the same bills that we've carried, like property rights, and we talk a lot about some of the criminal justice bills that we carried, like the bill imposing a mandatory minimum for rape of a child that both of us carried. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us to find areas upon which we've differed over the course of the years. And one area that I think we've consistently voted differently on, and I think both of us might have want to have an opportunity to address, is constitutional conventions. And over the years, you've consistently, I think, voted for bills to set up constitutional conventions to address the balanced budget. I've consistently voted against it. Maybe you could tell the folks here why you support it and give me an opportunity to tell them why I oppose it.
Sure. All right, so everybody, the issue is a constitutional convention, and this is one of the ways that you can amend this Constitution. It's in Article 5. Most of you know the other way you amend the Constitution is Congress proposes, goes out to the states. This would be a constitutional convention itself. Now, just so you know, Ken Cuccinelli himself has proposed and supported a constitutional convention for a different issue. For me, it's the budget, and I'll just do a thought experiment with you. We are $16 trillion in debt. It is another $1 trillion each year. Please raise your hand if you think Congress is going to balance the budget on their own. Okay? Please raise your hand if you think they're going to propose a constitutional amendment that will tie their own hands behind them. Okay, somebody does. One person does. All right, for the rest of you, you're in this with me. The question would be, what are we going to do with a Congress that is spending us into penury, that will break our country? I think we say we need to consider absolutely every possibility. I think it's a last thing to do. But I do think we need to at least consider an opportunity to say we will come up with a constitutional amendment that will bind Congress. The Founding Fathers put it in the Constitution for that reason, for when Congress is the problem. I think Congress is the problem. I think we need to leave it on the table. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Bell, you have the opportunity to ask Mr. Obenshain the question.
Okay. I had a much easier one before that one. That was hard.
I thought I got to respond, but I guess not.
No, we, everybody, Mark and I are friends. We've been friends before. I think that we're friends now. And the people, we were often asked, you know, how do you get along? So let me just make the question. So, Mark, I notice in the back is your daughter, Tucker, and you seem to have great success in having her help you with things. And she's driving him around everybody. I see her at all the events. She's advocating for him. And I have a 4-year-old daughter who I can't even get to pick up her dolls and put them in the bed. And I would welcome, brother, any thoughts you have on how to make my daughter turn out as well as Tucker has.
Boy, you know what, Rob, you and your wife are great parents. And you know, one of the things about this process is we really have had a great time traveling around the state together. And I have to say that this has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, being able to travel around with Rob and with these great guys running for lieutenant governor. And every bit as importantly as that is, you know, these guys who are in the back of the room, these these young folks who are working on all of these campaigns, they put in enormous hours, and they do it for love of the cause. We do it, I think, for love of our family. And we're not out here to get another job so that we can collect the glory, but we're out here because Rob cares about his 4-year-old daughter. I care about my 21-year-old daughter. I'm out here fighting, just like Rob is, to make sure that they have the same rights that we had and the same opportunities. And Evie is going to turn out just wonderfully.
Thank you. And gentlemen, you each have 3 minutes now for a closing statement. And Mr. Bell, you are first.
Happy to. I went first at the beginning. Okay.
Pardon me?
I had the first opening. I'm happy to defer.
You asked the last question.
That's fine. That's fine. All right, so everybody, thanks again for having us up here and coming out on a Saturday night. We had a chance to talk about some things that involve the office. We talked about the Constitution. Let me talk to you about crime for a second. Prosecuted 2,400 cases. I believe you have criminals that are knuckleheads that we got to work with, and we have some that are evil that we just have to lock up. I was very proud of the bill that we passed last year that said that if you rape a child who's 12 or under, you go to prison for the rest of your life. I was the House patron. Mark worked on it in the Senate. That's the law of the land, and it'll keep these people from reoffending again and again. We talked about, we haven't talked about welfare reform. Welfare is when you take money from somebody who's working and give it to somebody who's not. I had a bill that said that you will not get cash welfare benefits until you can pass a drug test. That bill has not passed. I'm going to keep working on that. We have this whole issue about voter ID. I think you should not get to vote unless you have no exceptions, no excuses. Photo ID to vote. I had a bill, Mark had a bill, mine didn't make it, his is on the governor's desk. Please call the governor and get him to sign that bill. Now, those are some of the things we've worked on. Let me just tell you, I'm proud of the support I have in this race. Many of the people who have had constitutional issues have endorsed me. So Bob Wilson is the gentleman whose property is being taken by the city of Norfolk to make it into a movie theater. He's endorsed me. Martha Bonita, County of Fauquier, is trying to fine her because she had a birthday party for her kids, violating her property rights. She's endorsing me. Dick Heller, the gentleman who sued Washington, D.C. to create the case that affirmed the personal right to possess a firearm. Hard to believe it's been that many years, but he did it. He's endorsing me. I've got an A rating from the NRA, a 100% rating from the American Conservative Union. These are the things I'll bring to the table. Now let me close with this. I was raised to believe that nothing is more important than hard work. Nothing. Doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how good looking you are. Nothing is more important than hard work, and I've tried to live my life that way. So that's how I became an Eagle Scout. That's how I won a scholarship to UVA. That's how I borrowed the money and put myself through law school. It's how I won my first political office, because I can assure you I was not the first choice of the power brokers. That's how I worked as a prosecutor, and that is how I got that, or worked with everybody to get that constitutional amendment passed, just banging your head against the wall 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times until finally you break through that wall. That is how I've tried to live my life. I promise you that if you elect me to be your Attorney General, I will fight doggedly and relentlessly to win you back your Constitution. I think that's what Virginia needs in its next Attorney General, and that's why I need your support at the convention. Thank you very much.
Once again, allow me to say thank you to the 9th District Republican Party for hosting this forum. It's been a pleasure to be with you. It's great to be here, and great opportunity to share. And thanks to Rob for being here and participating in this as well. You know, there's a guy named Mark Herring, lives in Leesburg. He's a member of the state Senate, has been there for 6 years. Mark Herring's running for Attorney General as a Democrat. And Mark Herring is traveling the Commonwealth of Virginia, telling everybody who will listen that we have got to take the politics out of the Attorney General's office. Allow me to translate for you. What that means is he wants Rob's politics, he wants my politics, and he wants your politics out of the Attorney General's office, and he wants an Attorney General who will lie down and will not stand up to an overreaching federal government, whether it is on environmental issues, whether it is on coal, whether it's on health care, or whether it is on our Second Amendment rights. We cannot allow that to happen. We have got to have somebody who serves as Attorney General, who runs for Attorney General, who has a record of accomplishment, somebody who has fought these fights, somebody who will have the ability to lead that office. I have led law offices for the past 25 years. I have fought these fights. I have won these fights in the General Assembly. Just this year, I fought for our Second Amendment rights. You saw and I saw the President when he stood up in January on national television. He read a letter from a third grader who displayed a better understanding of the limitations imposed upon his office than he did, saying, "Dear Mr. President, we want you to do something about guns, but we know you have to go through Congress to do it." Following which, the President issued his 23-point plan for undermining our Second Amendment rights. And following that, we saw a New York newspaper that published an interactive database showing the location of every gun owner in the vicinity. It was dangerous, it was wrong, and we took that opportunity here in Virginia to pass a bill that I introduced to protect your confidentiality and your privacy in the event that you have a concealed carry permit. I fought with Rob since 2005 for our property rights. I fought for photo ID since 2005, and this year, finally, it's passed. I want to close by telling you this. We cannot be satisfied with drawing that line in the sand any longer and saying we are not going to give up any more of our freedom. I think that over the course of the past 4 years, we have given up too much of our freedom. It is disappearing at a galloping rate. We have to be assertive. We have to be aggressive. We need to do the unthinkable. You know and I know, freedom once lost is seldom ever regained. We have to do that. We have to take it back. God bless you, and thank you for your hospitality tonight.
Can we have a Southwest Virginia thank you for Rob Bell, Mark Obenshain? We will take a very brief break to reset the stage, and we'll continue with the Lieutenant Governor debate. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will take your seats, please, and would you welcome to the stage the candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Corey Stewart, yes, sir. Come right on up. Hi, I'm Steve Hawkins. Nice to meet you. Hawkins? Hawkins. Yes. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Isn't that the name of the great?
He's Hawking, actually. Oh, yeah. Okay. No. Corey Stewart, Scott Lingamfelter, Susan Stimpson, Pete Snyder, E.W. Jackson, Jean Marie Davis, and Steve Martin. Please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you, sorry.
These are our candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Each will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, as was the case with the Attorney General candidates. We have drawn the order backstage, and we will rotate through as we present questions for them. So 2 minutes for opening statements. First, and let me say, if you are more comfortable standing to answer the questions, certainly feel free to do so. Corey Stewart, you're first.
Thanks a lot. Good evening, everyone. I just first wanted to thank Jack Morgan, and I wanted to thank all the district chairs down here in the 9th for putting this debate together. And I want to thank each and every one of you for attending and listening to all of us politicians speak about the Lieutenant Governor's race. My name is Corey Stewart. I'm chairman of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. It's the second largest county in the state with 425,000 residents. I've been chairman since 2006, and I am directly elected by all 425,000 residents. There's 77 precincts, and I've been there since 2006. I grew up as the son of a longshoreman. He was a Democrat, a union man, and he and I fought a lot about politics. He was a great man, but we disagreed on politics. I was the first in my family to go to college. I was an Eagle Scout, and afterward, after graduating from college, I met Maria, and now we've been married for 19 years. We've got 2 boys, Isaac, who just turned 13. And so I've got a teenager in the house. I understand what that's like now. And Luke, who is 11, going on 12. Since being chairman of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors, I've focused my efforts on cutting spending. I've cut spending by $143 million, lowered tax bills so much so that they're 30% lower than those in neighboring Fairfax and Loudoun counties. And 2007 led the nation's toughest crackdown on illegal immigration. So that's my record. I've been able to cut spending, I've cut taxes, I've cut crime, and that's what I want to do in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I hope to earn your support and your vote on May the 18th. Thank you all very, very much.
Next, Scott Lingamfelter.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Normally when we have opening remarks, I spend some time and talk about why I think I'm qualified to be Lieutenant Governor. You can go to my website. I encourage you to do that, because I want to use the time I have available to tell you a story. Several months ago, I was in Grundy. I was down there meeting some supporters, and I had some time to kill.
and I was over at the coal miner statue. How many of you know where that is in Grundy? I'm taking some pictures, and a fellow walked up to me whose family was in a van across the empty parking lot, had a flat tire. He asked if I could help him. Could he use my jack? So I got the jack out and I helped him fix his car. My car has 408,000 miles on it, by the way. I'm as cheap as a wet knot, I'm telling you right now. And so I went to help this fellow. And after we were done, I asked him what he did, and he said he's a coal miner. And I asked him, what do you think about what's going on in the country today? He looked at me and he said, you know, sir, I don't know what's going to happen. I never thought my government would wage war against my family and my job and my future and my Constitution. Folks, I've been in combat. I've led men in combat. And I know what fear looks like. And this man had fear on his face. Let me tell you why I'm running for lieutenant governor. Because I never, ever want to see a man with that kind of fear on his face in the United States of America. The government should never be threatening our freedom, our Constitution, our liberty, our jobs, and the welfare of our families. That's why I'm in this race.
Thank you, sir. Susan Stimson.
Good evening. I'm Susan Stimson. I'm chairman of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors. We're the 7th largest county in Virginia, located just below Prince William, the Fredericksburg region. And my husband, Dan, we've been married 20 years this September. He's a retired Marine, went to the Naval Academy. We met my senior year at Mary Washington in Fredericksburg. And we spent the first 15 years of our marriage moving around the country. So I was a military spouse. I care very much about veterans issues. And I know that that's definitely relevant here to the state of Virginia. Coming down here today was like coming home. My mom's family from just over the border in Princeton, West Virginia. And so it always just leaves a very pleasant feeling coming down this beautiful drive. But Republicans, we have a problem. We have a governor in Governor McDonnell. We have a Speaker of the House in Bill Howell. And we have a Senate Majority Leader in Senator Tommy Norment. That finally we have all 3 houses of government, and we're going to solve transportation. How? By the largest tax increase in Virginia's history. Not only that, we've now expanded entitlements. With just a few months ago, we were running against President Obama on that same issue. What are we as Republicans to do in the next election if, when we're in power, we cave on these freedoms and on these liberties? My concern is, what liberty is next? It doesn't even do any good to talk about Democrats at this point when we need to get our own house in order. And in Stafford County, I have, with my fellow board members, gotten our house in order. We cut our pay by 25%. We eliminated an onerous business tax, B-POL. We cut overall real estate taxes 3 years in a row and took our general admin staff down to 2004 levels. Conservative governing works. The next year, we jumped to #1 in job growth, and we've had millions of dollars in economic surplus, allowing us to continue to lower taxes. I want that same success for all of Virginia, and I will fight for your liberty.
Thank you, Ms. Stimson. Next is Pete Snyder.
Good evening, fighting Ninth. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. And I want to give a special thanks to your great leader, someone who I call the preacher of prosperity, Jack Morgan, for his inspiring words about liberty. I'm so blessed to have Jack's endorsement for Lieutenant Governor. And folks, there has been no region in the Commonwealth that fought harder and produced bigger and better results than the 9th District did this past year. No other part of the Commonwealth that fought harder. And why is that? Well, it's because y'all have heart. Secondly, you have a work ethic that would choke a horse. And thirdly, you fought because it was all on the line. When the Obama administration puts in its sight lines the coal industry, the #1 employer in your region, you better believe you fought. And I'll tell you, it's 2013. It's all on the line again. across America, across Virginia, across the fighting Ninth. Just ask Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. The #1 issue out there is jobs and the economy. And I'm surrounded by some fine men and women that are running for lieutenant governor. But I'm the only one in this race with a proven real-world record in creating jobs. I created hundreds of jobs here in Virginia and inspired an entirely new industry. I've also been a fighter in our conservative movement for the past 20 years. That's why I have the support of Jack Morgan. That's why I have your young gun delegate, Israel O'Quinn, as my campaign co-chair. And also I have conservative icons like Mike Ferris behind me. So I will be a conservative partner in reform for our next governor, Ken Cuccinelli, as we tackle the big issues: education reform, economic development, and cutting the size and scope of government. I ask for your support on May 18th. Get to know me over the weeks ahead. Thank you so much.
Snyder. Thank you. Next is E.W. Jackson.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this time of crisis, shrink from their duty to their country. But those who stand by her deserve the love and thanks of man and woman alike. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily defeated. Folks, this race is not about anybody's political career. It's not about whether we can win a campaign. This race is ultimately about the battle between good and evil, the battle between freedom and tyranny, whether we will remain a constitutional republic or we will morph into something else. And that battle is joined in Virginia. Virginia is the place that produced the commander-in-chief who won the Revolutionary War. Virginia is the place that produced the man who said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." Virginia is the place who produced the man who said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Virginia is the place that produced the man who framed the Constitution of the United States that was originally called the Virginia Plan. And Virginia is the place where the battle for freedom must be fought today. And folks, it is up to you. It is up to us. This is not about a campaign. This is about a movement to restore the foundations that made this nation great in the very first place. And whether our children and our children's children will be robbed of that legacy. And I'm running for lieutenant governor for that reason only. If this country were in trouble, I'd be doing something else. But I'm running because I believe that voices like mine need to be heard. And if you give me the opportunity to serve as your lieutenant governor, I will be a champion for freedom, and I will fight this battle with my dying breath. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Next, Jean Marie Davis.
Good evening. It's terrific to be back in Washington County, and thank you to the 9th District for allowing us this opportunity to speak with all of you. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I think it's important for you to hear this because I'm also going to talk about what the role of lieutenant governor is. I grew up in an Air Force family, moved to Arlington, Virginia when I was 10. I'm the mother of 4 daughters who are 24 to 34, and my 3rd daughter, Cassie, is an Air Force officer. I'm very proud that she's decided to serve our nation that way. I have a degree in mathematics from the University of Virginia, and in 1997 I was elected to the House of Delegates and served 3 terms there. My 3rd term, I was elected the Majority Whip and have the distinction of being the only woman in the history of the General Assembly to ever be elected into a top leadership position. After that, I was elected to the State Senate, where I was the only Republican woman and the only pro-life woman. So it was my responsibility to kill those Planned Parenthood bills, and that's just what I did. While I was in the Senate and after I left the last couple of years after, I was a partner in a small technology consulting firm. And then when Governor McDonnell was elected, he asked me to serve in his cabinet, which I've been doing for about the past 3 years. I left him in September to run statewide. And I directed the Washington office, where I was in the front lines, working with our great Congressman Morgan Griffith and the other Republican congressmen in Virginia, tackling Obamacare, the education reauthorization, where this president wants to exact Common Core standards and tell our states how to run their school systems. And that was the kind of work that I did running that Washington office. You know, there's 2 obligations of the lieutenant governor in the code. One is to preside over the state senate, But the second is to stand ready to become governor if the governor should become incapacitated. And I am the only candidate for lieutenant governor who has legislative experience, executive branch experience, and has run that Washington office. So I know intimately what each department and agency does and how every action the federal government takes impacts the state. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Now, Steve Martin.
Thank you for your kind hospitality. This is my seventh trip, swing, 2.5-day, 2 to 3 day swing through the Fighting Ninth in the last, over the last several months, and I enjoy being with you. I have been here many times. My first trip down into a longwall mine was almost 25 years ago, and I've been down here in the Fighting Ninth to campaign throughout the last 25 years many times, and had attended public hearings. I love the drive, I love the community, and I brought my family into the area many times as well. I was raised on a farm in Southside, Virginia, in a family of 8 children. I found it necessary when I was very young, at the age of 17, to go to work to help my mother provide for my 5 younger sisters who had survived. My father passed away. She had not worked outside the home in 23 years. I worked in the electrical field for some years. I've been in the insurance business for almost 29 years. And for over 25 years, I've had the privilege of public service. Now, the most important thing in my life is my commitment, my relationship with my Heavenly Father. I want Him glorified in my life. I serve out of a love for my Heavenly Father, my nation, my family, my commonwealth, and the great people that we have within it. I'm privileged to do so, and throughout the years, I've had the opportunity to lead on some iconic conservative legislation. And more recently, I was the one who wrote the 2 sentences that became the Health Care Freedom Act that Ken Cuccinelli took to the Supreme Court. And I carried Senate Bill 1, which became the law that says you've got to show your ID at the polls. I carried welfare reform in the mid-1990s and chaired the national task force that made that a model piece of legislation that finally got Bill Clinton to sign it on the 3rd occasion. We'll have opportunities to talk about my issues, but faith, family, and freedom, the issues of limited government, free enterprise, competition in the marketplace, and individual liberty, with insistence on personal responsibility, is what guides me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the questions part of the debate. Because there are 7 of you, and we want to ask numerous questions, we'll ask that you limit your answers to 60 seconds, please. Question number 1 will begin with Scott Lingamfelter. Unfortunately, the Southwest, South Side regions are not as economically prosperous as the other regions of the Commonwealth. Unemployment rates in some localities here are among the highest in Virginia. What specific policies or actions would you implement as Lieutenant Governor to improve the economy and the number of jobs available to Southwest Virginia residents?
That is really an excellent question. We have a real opportunity here in Virginia. We are a right-to-work state. Are you glad that we're a right-to-work state? I'm glad we're a right-to-work state, which is why I voted to protect our right to work. And we're also a low-tax state, which is why I voted against the transportation bill that would have raised your taxes this year. I think those 2 things are vitally important to attract new businesses to Virginia. And I think we have a real opportunity, if we're very wise, to work in the area particularly of attracting more light manufacturing here to the Commonwealth. We may not be able to get GM. We may not be able to get International Harvester, but there are lots of opportunities to reach out to light manufacturing companies and bring them here to Virginia, where we can employ our people and give them a real shot at the American dream. As Lieutenant Governor, I will work closely with the Governor in anything he asks me to do, and particularly if he asks me to take on the mission of helping develop more jobs and opportunity here in Virginia, as Lieutenant Governor Bolling was asked to do under Bob McDonnell.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stimson.
As I was driving down here to Southwest, the landscape was quite different than in the Fredericksburg region in Northern Virginia. And as I looked out the window at the changing landscape, I could not help but think about the arrogance of the Republican leadership that passed higher taxes that are going to end up hurting those economically disadvantaged the first and the most. Part of what my leadership will be is what I've done in Stafford County, and that is being consistent to the principles of a limited government, keeping the power in your hands. An overall lower and broader tax burden that has been relieved, lowering taxes, property taxes, car taxes, income taxes. Conservative governing works, and when families have money themselves to make decisions for themselves, then they have the ability to be the best that they can be.
Thank you, Ms. Stimson. Pete Snyder.
Well, as an entrepreneur, I would love to be a partner with Governor Ken Cuccinelli in revitalizing our economy here in Virginia. We need to make sure that all regions of Virginia are humming on all cylinders. And one specific way of doing that is to eliminate the corporate income tax. Let's open up all of Virginia to small fry entrepreneurs like me and the medium and large size companies as well. I'll give you an example of economic development, shall we say Snyder style. I don't know, have any of you heard what's going on with Beretta these days? Beretta, the gun makers, located in Maryland. And Governor Martin O'Malley and all the crazy liberals are passing all sorts of gun-grabbing laws. They're going to force Beretta out of the state. They can't even practice what they do. I'm an investor. I called up the head of Beretta, sent a letter, and said, I've started 2 businesses in Virginia. Come on over. The water's fine. The environment's fine over here. And you know what? If you need capital to move, my company will help finance it. Let's go make Maryland a gunmaker-free zone.
Thank you, sir. E.W. Jackson.
Well, first of all, we've got to get the federal governments off the backs of the people of Virginia. We've got to stand up to the things that they are doing to encroach on our rights. How in the world are you going to bring jobs into an economy when the EPA is busy trying to stagnate and smother every entrepreneurial effort, smother farmers, smother small business people trying to get started? How can you do it? We've got to have a state government leadership that stands up against the federal government and steps side by side with each of you to say, we will not go along with them. When the FDA is stepping in and telling farmers what they can and cannot do, how they can and cannot put their products to market even among their own neighbors within their own community. So that's the first thing we got to do. Get the federal government off your back. I support a taxpayer bill of rights to limit the right of the state government to grow beyond inflation and the growth of the economy as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Jean Marie Davis.
Thank you. Excuse me. You've heard a lot of talk about lower regulations and lower taxes, and those are all important to create a good workplace environment. And you've heard about attracting businesses. Well, if attracting businesses to Southwest and Southside Virginia were the solution, the only solution we've been looking at for years, everyone here would have a job. It's part of the solution, but it isn't the whole solution because it isn't working. This is what I want to do. I have a tremendous relationship with the Northern Virginia IT community. I want to create a synergy between the IT community and Southside and Southwest Virginia. And then I want to use the Highland Education Center and the Highland Community College and all the community colleges to create a skilled workforce in the areas that the IT community is deficient. And then I want to use telework. My daughter teleworks. She works from Arlington, Virginia for a company in Oakland, California, and they pay her almost $100,000 a year. We need to think outside the box and create long-term sustainable jobs through telework by educating a skilled workforce in the IT community and connecting those jobs from Northern Virginia to this region.
Thank you. Steve Martin.
Thank you. A number of the ideas that have been mentioned already are good ideas, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the endorsement of my legislation that I introduced some 6-8 months ago to end corporate income tax in the state of Virginia. But it's not just because of the jobs that it would create, and it would be very helpful in creating jobs simply with the present economic activity that we've got. The fact is that with the widening of the Panama Canal Zone scheduled to be completed in 2014, an awful lot of shipping is going to come from the West Coast, not put in at the West Coast, going to bypass that and come up the East Coast. Right to work's great, and the fact that we are the deepest port this far south helps us as well. But if you remove our corporate income tax, we are going to have companies come in here like you won't believe, and we'll have prosperity across the board. I held hearings down here in Big Stone Gap and others, Gate City, and some of these mining towns years ago with welfare reform. It was really bad then. It's gotten much worse since the attack on coal, and we've got to do something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Corey Stewart.
Thank you. Last October, I actually had a chance to tour a surface mine in Hurley, Virginia, not too far from here. And, it was a real shame because after the election, you know what happened to that mine? It was shut down. They shut it down and they moved their operations, all the equipment and as much personnel as they could to Australia. They knew they couldn't take another 4 years of the Obama administration. That's not just a shame, that's an act absolutely devastating. And not just for Southwest Virginia, but all of Virginia. I think we got a real problem in Virginia. It's not enough just to complain about the federal government. We've got to offer real solutions. It's not enough that we only have one congressman who's speaking out and trying to do something about this in Washington. We've got to get all of our legislative delegation in Washington, whether you're in the 11th or whether you're in the 1st or whether you're in the 9th. We got to make sure that we act as a commonwealth, that we're all looking out for each other. It's not about Southwest Virginia fighting this fight by itself. We've got to all surround and do the right thing for all of you. Because at the end of the day, bad news in Southwest Virginia is bad news for all of us in Virginia.
I apologize for having to interrupt you, sir, but thank you very much. We'll move to our second question now. And ladies and gentlemen, would you please hold your applause until after closing statements, even if one of the candidates tells you what a handsome group you are. Please hold your applause until after closing statements. Thank you. Question number 2, Susan Stimson, it goes to you first. Explain why you're qualified to step in and become governor if the need arises.
Well, I would say that the traditional paradigm that we're used to of experience, where's that getting us? We now have a proposal of the highest tax increase in Virginia's history and an expansion of entitlements in Medicaid, which you and I both know that our state cannot sustain. I have both executive and legislative experience being the chairman of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors. So not only do we legislate the policy, but we execute the policy. And one of the paradigm shifts in this, I understand the impacts of the state decisions down on the localities. The majority of the state budget goes to your community, my community, all of the counties. I understand the impacts of that. But more than anything, I'm not afraid to stand up when I see your liberty in jeopardy, and I have towed the line in Stafford County on conservative governing and been successful at it.
Thank you, Ms. Stimson. Mr. Snyder, why you're qualified to step in and become governor if need be.
Sure, very simply, I've spent over half my life as an executive. And I've balanced over the years over 15 budgets. I'm a real-world job creator when the #1 issue facing Southwest Virginia and facing Virginia and the entire nation are jobs and the economy. That said, I'm also a proven conservative. I've fought alongside y'all in the trenches for over 20 years. So you know when it comes to higher taxes, I'm not going to be in the go-along, get-along gang. I'm used to bringing people together because that's what you have to do to have results in business, but I'm not afraid to make the hard decisions. There is a freedom in being an up-by-your-bootstraps entrepreneur. No one made me. I don't owe anyone a single thing except you all, and I will fight to make sure that our economy in Virginia is headed in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. E.W. Jackson, same question.
I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I believe that we do need more veterans serving us in public office who know what it is to put their lives on the line for freedom. I ran a small business for 10 years, so I know what it is to hire, to fire, to balance a budget, and to deal with government regulations. I fought with the FCC. But, you know, Ronald Reagan was elected governor as the first elective office he ever held to the largest state in the country. He was not a technocrat, and neither am I. He was not a policy wonk, but he was a leader of conviction. He knew what he stood for. He was able to bring people together, to rally people, to unify people around his agenda. And that's what we need in the governor's office. As we've seen, I was told not too long ago, our governor is a policy wonk. Well, how's that working out for us? We need leaders with conviction who know what they stand for, who say what they mean what they say, and then will do it.
Thank you, sir. Jean Marie Davis, why are you qualified to step in and become governor?
Well, I think I talked a little about it in my opening statement. I think that my experience in the executive branch and the cabinet and running that Washington office is very, very important. I think I'm now finally ready to take on this awesome responsibility. But I want to say, this isn't just about a budget. The governor is like a CEO that has multiple lines of business. You have to understand how health and human resources works, how transportation works, how natural resources works, how public safety works, how agriculture works, how technology works. We have a secretary, unlike Terry McAuliffe, I can name all of them. We've got a secretary, a line of work that you have to oversee across the gamut. You need to understand that the Community and Housing Development Authority is providing sewer systems for the poor who are still using outhouses in Southwest Virginia. You need to understand that. You need to understand how all of those agencies work to provide the services and the needs of every citizen in Virginia. And if you don't understand all of that, you can't possibly do a good job as the governor. And I grasp all that because I've been doing that kind of work for the past 15 years.
Thank you. Steve Martin, same question.
You sure are a good-looking group. Experience and a record that you can look at and absolutely count on. And the fact is that throughout the years, I've been successful in legislative efforts. I chair the most challenging committee there is in the General Assembly, Education and Health. I was the first social conservative allowed to serve on that committee. The Senate refused to organize itself for 2.5 days to keep me from going on there. Now I'm a senior member and I chair it. When I pick up that gavel, I will know what I'm doing. I'll know what's going on around me. I'll be able to sense by the very movement and the conversations between the people that I've known all these years what they're getting ready to try to do, and I'll be ready for it. You can look at my record and you can absolutely count on how I'm going to cast that vote. And should the governor not be able to perform his duties, I understand how the government operates. I understand the needs, and I can step in there and do the job should that be the case. And well, that's okay.
Thank you. Corey Stewart.
Thank you. Well, for the past 7 years, I've been governing the second largest county in the state, 425,000 residents, and it's a tough political atmosphere. It went 57% for Barack Obama. But despite all that, I have a major accomplishments, conservative accomplishments. Cutting spending $143 million, eliminating 320 county jobs, reducing tax bills 8.5%, and still getting the job done. Because at the end of the day, it's up to me as the executive to get things accomplished. And whether you're a center-leaning Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, people are tired of politicians who talk but never accomplish anything. They're tired of politicians who talk a good game and say they tried and submitted a bill and did this or that and the other thing, but get nothing done. I have that record. I've got a record of accomplishment. I know how to get things accomplished, even in a tough political atmosphere.
Thank you. And Mr. Lingamfelter.
It's a great question because it goes to the very core of what we need to consider when we're electing lieutenant governors. This person have the experience and the leadership abilities. When I graduated from VMI in 1973, I went in the Army, where I served for 28 years. I've commanded large organizations. I've led men in both war and peace. I understand how to bring people around tough problems and find solutions that will work. All of us need to be ready to be lieutenant governor on day one, but we also must be ready to be governor on day two. I'm ready for that. And let me tell you something. As a leader, I learned a long time ago that you got to be who you say you are and do what you say you will. I have a proven conservative record. I understand the complex legislative process in Richmond, and I understand the government. Jean Marie's right. You've got to have people who understand what is going on in Richmond, because if you ever cast a bad vote as lieutenant governor, you'll live with that law, a bad law, for a very long time.
Thank you, sir. Let's move to our next question. And Pete Snyder, the question to you first. What are your views on Agenda 21? If your views have evolved over time, explain your viewpoints. Do you support or oppose the Agenda 21 concept? Why or why not?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 2013. I think it is far time that the ghost of Kofi Annan be exorcised from the United States of America. We cannot have American sovereignty being put at risk by the blue flag of the United Nations. I think Agenda 21 is absolutely wrong. I will fight against it at every single turn. And the only laws that should be governing our land are the ones made right here in the United States, period.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
Well, since I'm running for lieutenant governor, not president, this probably doesn't advance the cause, but I can just tell you that were I running for president, one of my policies would be to kick the UN out of the United States of America. I believe they need to go. Agenda 21, also known as Sustainable Development, is an insidious, wicked, evil attempt by the United Nations to insinuate itself into our local communities for the purpose of planning those communities out in ways that we don't approve of. Now, you've got a bunch of thugs and dictators in the United Nations who can't do anything but oppress and kill people, and they want to come here and tell us how we live our lives? No, thank you. As far as I am concerned, we need to fight it, and it's already in counties across Virginia, but we need to inform our boards of supervisors. We need a lieutenant governor who can educate them about it so they don't think it's some wild conspiracy theory, and let them know it's something that we need to oppose and kick them out of Virginia if we can't kick them out of the United States.
Jean Marie Davis, same question.
I hate following E.W. Jackson. It happens to me all the time. And I don't know what's left to be said, but I will tell you this. I represented Fairfax County. That's where I'm from. And I have watched the Democrats on the Board of Supervisors use this urban development planning to change my county over from a conservative county to a liberal county. Town centers with that mixed use, whether it's commercial, it's townhouses, it's condominiums, they just plant them all over the county. And I've watched precincts in my own district that were rock-solid Republican become rock-solid liberal performing precincts in 2 years. As soon as it's done and the urban dwellers move in, we lose the votes there. And so I also want to add to it that it's a political tool that's being used, I believe, in Northern Virginia to turn our county over, and we've seen the Democrats use it quite successfully. And I'll tell you this, they call it smart growth up there, and they say that if we have everyone working and living at the same place, it'll cut back on traffic. Well, traffic's now the worst trafficked in the United States of a nation, so that certainly isn't working.
Thank you. Steve Martin, same question on Agenda 21.
Yeah, sustainable development, urban UDAs, and also smart growth, they are just aspects of it. The whole of it is the denying of our liberties, taking away of our liberties. And I will tell you that as the senior member of local government through which local governments come to try to get these authorities, I can tell you that you can look and you can see year after year, bill after bill, sometimes me being the only no vote, sometimes only 2 or 3 or 4 of us now who vote no on these various bills that give local governments the authorities to deny property rights. I told our folks back home years ago when they come up with that stuff, I'm not going to be concerned about representing them corporately as much as I'm going to be concerned about representing the individuals. Yes, the federal government and the state government are also imposing things, and yes, we need to roll them back. but I did not need to know that there was such a thing as Agenda 21 to know that the policies were wrong.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. Well, Agenda 21 is not some crazy conspiracy theory. In fact, it exists right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In 2007, the General Assembly introduced some legislation. It was called, you know what it was called? New Urbanism. So this was brought up by the knuckleheads down in the General Assembly to try to force local governments, i.e. local taxpayers, local residents, develop high-density development, sustainable development, low-carbon footprint development, a bunch of junk. And just like I don't want and you don't want Washington invading the decision-making in Virginia, we shouldn't have people in Richmond telling us as local taxpayers and local residents what kind of land use policies we should be having in our own localities. That's what this is about. Richmond needs to stay in Richmond and not try to interfere with your local property rights.
Thank you. And Mr. Lingenfelter, same Agenda 21 question.
Well, of all the people that have spoken on this issue, I was the person on this dais that carried the resolution this year in the Virginia General Assembly opposing Agenda 21. And the press ridiculed me, and they called me nutty and everything under the sun. But let me tell you what they don't understand. This ICLIC crowd that does the Agenda 21 is a socialist organization. Now, maybe Barack Obama likes them. I don't. And I don't think they should be establishing the policy for how people function in their local government. Has anybody tried to build a pond lately? Tried to do that? Millions of dollars. Because of all the things that get layered on top of property rights and on property owners. It is a sad day in America when a person in a locality can't use their property as they see fit.
Thank you. Ms. Stimson, you're the final person to respond to the Agenda 21 question.
This is a prime example of why it's time for a paradigm shift. And having someone who's been an executive and a legislator at the local level in a position of state leadership, because I understand the impacts of state legislation on the communities. And just to educate you on the beginning of this, Corey referenced this, but it was House Bill 3202 that provided the groundwork for urban development areas, which 3 of my opponents up here on the stage voted for. In 2010, there were 2 localities, 2 counties that went to testify before the General Assembly, please do not implement these urban development areas. There was 1 no vote, and that was Senator Richard Stewart when it first came through the Senate. The committee said, no thank you. The General Assembly passed it unanimously. Counties had to implement UDAs by July the 1st, urban development areas, and then the next year, the same guy that authored the mandate, the General Assembly passed and made urban development areas optional. That's why we need a different paradigm shift.
Thank you. Our next question will pose to you first, Mr. Jackson. Southwest Virginia has vast coal and energy resources that provide many quality jobs for our citizens. Access to top quality educational opportunities is also a top priority for the region. What specific plans would you have to see that Southwest Virginia maximizes its energy resources and also has funding for quality educational opportunities?
Well, first, on maximizing energy resources, folks, the reality is we've got to make sure that our state regulatory apparatus frees up our land here in Southwest Virginia to be mined for coal, to be used for the exploration of energy that is available to us. And we've got to at least consider, study, figure out what we're going to do about this whole uranium mining question. Communities have to be deeply involved in these issues. But once again, we've got to get the federal government off the backs of our people. We've got to be able to control what happens to our resources, and that means we've got to stand up for the 10th Amendment. That's part of my platform. Now, for education, I believe that we've got to have universal parental educational choice. Let the educational dollars follow the parent, whether they want to homeschool their child, send their child to a Christian school. Let the parent decide, not the government decide, and I think we'll see a revolution in education.
Thank you, sir. Same question, Jean Marie Davis.
Thank you. Working in the governor's Washington office, I did a lot of work in energy. And our greatest challenge, unfortunately, is something our congressional delegation needs to help us with, and that's this administration that wants to shut down fossil fuel development. Governor McDonnell wanted to drill offshore, which I know is on the other side of Virginia, and the president had complied, and then at the BP oil spill, he put a moratorium in and is refusing to allow any states to drill offshore that aren't currently doing it. We've seen what has happened with these MACT rules that the EPA has been promulgating and how that's closing down coal. And really, their goal is to make sure that not another coal-powered plant is ever built in this country. And they're going after nuclear plant with cooling towers and recommendations or requirements that are going to cost billions of dollars to comply with. So we have a real issue nationally with this administration and the EPA. As far as education is concerned, I had a long meeting with a member of the Board of Supervisors in Russell County yesterday, and it's clear to me that we have cut state aid to education so badly that our public schools systems in this region are suffering quite a bit, and we've got to stop doing that and restore those funds for our local public schools.
Ms. Davis, thank you. Steve Martin, same question.
We need a governor and an attorney general and a lieutenant governor to give voice as well that will challenge the federal government and push them back, and we need a legislature, the House and Senate, a solid conservative Republican legislature that will back them up in pushing back the federal government on their attack on fossil fuels. They're not just going after coal. They're going after fracking. They're not letting us go offshore. They're even going to come after the gas mining that's going on in the Appalachian Highlands from all across the East Coast. And so we need those folks that will push back. On education, I've been fighting for a full, blown-out education choice. I chair that committee. We don't have the votes there yet. My aspiration for the next 4 years, at the end of those 4 years, is to make sure you have a House and Senate. There's a solid conservative Republican Senate that you don't have to lobby so hard to get them to do the right thing, and we'll get that job done.
Mr. Stewart?
Thank you. It is absolutely true that the federal government is mostly to blame for the problems of the coal industry, whether it be the Army Corps of Engineers or it be the EPA. They are making it more and more difficult through the 402 and the 404 regulations to mine. They're deliberately trying to kill the coal industry. But at the end of the day, and we need to have a united front against the federal government on that. We don't have that right now in Richmond. But the next thing is we've got to, in lieu of changing of a federal hard and changing of the administration, we've got to see what we can do now. Now, the real core of this problem is the significant price differential between the cost of coal and the cost of natural gas. It's going to take some time. Eventually, those prices for natural gas will come up and the price of coal will come down. But in the meantime, we're going to have to look for ways to transition, look at new technologies, horizontal drilling, ways of fracking in this area. But we've got to make that transition and get over this hump until we can go to the next technology.
Thank you. Mr. Lingamfelter, same question.
It is utterly incomprehensible, and it is also stupid that this country does not do everything it can to explore for new energy. If you look at the coal energy, if you look at the coal industry today, what you'll find is that fundamental costs are pretty flat. But it's gone up 30% to mine. Why? One reason: regulation. Federal regulation designed to do one thing: deliberately put the coal industry out of work. The only thing we can do is throw every one of the incomprehensibly stupid people at the federal level out of government and get them out of the way. We also need to explore for natural gas off of Virginia's coast. It is there, rich deposits, that can create tremendous jobs and opportunity for Virginia. Incredible, folks, that we can't get this right. Utterly incredible.
Thank you. Same question for Susan Stimson.
Coal is a cheap and abundant energy resource here in Southwest Virginia, and it's vital to this economy. It's vital to Virginia. And it's also vital, I believe, to America, of providing us with the energy that we need. So who do you trust as your leader to step up and push back on the federal overreach that President Obama has made it clear? His goal, since he can't get it through the constitutional way, through the legislative process, is to do it through policy with the EPA by putting so many regulations in place that it is literally crippling the coal industry here. I will fight and push back on that federal overreach, just like I fought on federal issues and pushing back at the county in Stafford as well. On education, what we've done in Stafford County, something creative that I think we can do at the state level as well, you can categorically fund to ensure that classroom dollars go to the classroom and so that admin gets cut. We have categorically funded instruction and technology, and I would have that same approach in my leadership position as Lieutenant Governor.
And Mr. Snyder, you're the final to respond to this same question.
It is very clear from the beginning of our country with our founding fathers that God blessed the Commonwealth of Virginia. And God clearly blessed the Commonwealth of Virginia with an abundance of unbelievable natural resources. And I think it's not only a matter of economic security, I would argue it's a matter of national security that we have an all of the above and all of the below policy for energy exploration in Virginia and in the United States of America. We need to push back. We need to fight the feds for making the wrong decision and having us be hostage to the Middle East and dictators for our energy supplies. On education, that is the #1 issue that I'm talking about in this campaign, education reform. Finally passing that constitutional amendment that will allow for more choice and charter schools in Virginia. Virginia needs to lead in education again.
Thank you. As we did with the Attorney General candidates, we want to give each of these candidates the opportunity to ask another person on stage a question. They'll have 60 seconds to pose their question to whomever they choose. That person will have 60 seconds to answer. And remember, the Fighting Ninth is just a slogan. Jean Marie Davis, you're first.
Thank you. Pete, during the course of this campaign, you have talked about how bloated the federal budget is, and yet you repeatedly visited with my husband and other members of Congress to request a direct earmark for your company, New Media Strategies. You have also claimed that you would cut 10% from the state budget, that 10% can easily be cut from any budget, and yet, as a member of the William & Mary Board of Visitors, you voted on May 27th of last year to increase spending by 5%, which was over $7 million, and to raise tuition by 3.3%, which is added to the non-general fund portion of the state budget. Lastly, you have repeatedly stated that you support the Second Amendment and do not support any restrictions on gun owners, and yet you voted at the Board of Visitors meeting on December 9, 2011, to expressly prohibit any person, including concealed carry, but police officers from carrying a firearm onto any portion of the William & Mary campus. This is the only vote you have ever cast on the Second Amendment. How do you reconcile these actions with your campaign rhetoric?
I would thank you for your question. I would love for the crowd to just take for a moment and savor the irony of you asking anybody about the Second Amendment. First and foremost, that is a misfire. That is a misfire because I have adamantly rejected any encroachment on the Second Amendment at William & Mary, and the rector of the college knows it. But I find it very troubling that the only person on this stage, the only person who has wavered in their view of the Second Amendment was you, in a race that you lost. And as a Hail Mary at the very end, you brought in Michael Bloomberg and renounced the Second Amendment, renounced the policies of Virginia, and renounced the edicts of your party. That's unconscionable. As it relates to the federal government and your husband, I'm a board member of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they wanted a program to try to catch pedophiles. And I had an innovative company and a solution that could try to lock some of these people up. So I was very happy to work with your husband, but disappointed that nothing happened there.
Thank you, sir. Steve Martin, you're next.
Thank you. The Fighting Ninth is more than just a slogan. I mean, that came as a result of Jeff Stafford's run for Congress some decades ago. My former office mate, by the way, whom I loved and hated to see him pass us. But But my question is for Corey. And Corey, and my office, my question was going to be far softer. I might firm it up just a little bit, but but you know, I've certainly enjoyed the beautiful Southwest throughout the years, and long before I ever decided to run for this office, been spending a lot of time down here throughout the years with my family and otherwise because I love it. Why don't you tell us about your efforts to help and work down here in the 9th District prior to you beginning to run about 5.5 to 6 years or so ago?
Okay, well, thank you. Actually, thank you, really. Especially after that last exchange. I appreciate that, Steve. I will ask you a question now, I tell you. But no, it's been great to be down here in Southwest. I spent the first half, I've been running for this office for over a year now. I spent really the first few months down here in Southwest with Bobby Clancher. I think a lot of you know him. He and I drove all around, and Tucker, and there's so many of you down here have been so kind and open, and I really appreciate it. I've learned so much. I've learned so much, and what it really endears me to Southwest is this reminds me of a place where I grew up that was just really good, solid people, and you're sincere, and I really love it. The one thing that we have to remember in Virginia, and my time is running out, but we are in this together. We are a commonwealth. There was a time when Southwest Virginia was providing more wealth for the rest of the state. And now when you're hurting, we got to bind together, and we got to see what we can do for your industry and revive Southwest Virginia.
Mr. Stewart, while you're up,
well, thank you.
It's your turn.
Well, actually, I had a good softball question for EW. Last week, I actually had the opportunity, the governor was not invited, but I was, to speak at CPAC last weekend. And the question that was presented to me, and the reason I spoke, was minority inclusion. Now, why would they ask me? It's because even as Prince William County became more and more diverse, it's the first majority-minority county in Northern Virginia, my winning margin actually increased, and they wanted to know how I was able to do that. And the way that I described, I went to 50 different African-American churches in 2011. I spoke about being pro-life, 100% pro-life. I spoke about my opposition to gay marriage. Now, those are normally things that you're shot down for in Northern Virginia, but these are our bridge issues. These are our principles, and these are ways to reach out to minority voters. My question, though, is, EW, I'd love to get your perspective on how we can bring more minority voters to our conservative movement.
Thank you, Corey. And first of all, I'd like to say I think Corey Stewart is a minority candidate. He's from Minnesota.
Thanks a lot.
Well, first of all, I want to commend Corey because he talks a lot about this issue, and it's important that it be spoken about. It's important that we understand that we have to reach out. My perspective is we don't need to condescend. We don't need to change our principles. We don't need to change our values. We need to reach out to people on the basis of shared values. Folks, freedom works for everybody. It works for everybody. It's not about masses or groups. It's about individuals. And when you take that message to people, they hear it. They respond to it. Churches all over this Commonwealth, be they black, Hispanic, evangelical, what have you, when we talk to them about those Judeo-Christian principles that we believe in, it resonates with them. So yes, we don't have to pander, but we certainly do have to reach out, and I think the Republican Party, frankly, has failed to do that sufficiently.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lingamfelter.
I'd like to ask myself a question. Not really. EW, you've mentioned a couple of times in forums, and I think it deserves some treatment. Virginia has this economic empowerment effort where we look for enterprise zones here in the state and in the current law, and you've mentioned that you would like to see that improved in Virginia. Would you share with us what it is about the current enterprise zone system that you would like to see improved?
Well, as you look around the Commonwealth, in these enterprise zones, you don't see a whole lot of enterprise happening. I believe that part of the problem is that we spend too much time trying to recruit major corporations to come to Virginia and too little time trying to figure out how to make small businesses more productive by giving them a lighter regulatory burden and giving them the opportunity to be able to resist some of the encroachments, as you know, that are coming against the federal government, standing with them, because right now our small businesses are being strangled. They can't hire employees above 29 hours without having to incur the cost of Obamacare. They can't grow to but so many employees without having to incur the cost of Obamacare. So it comes back to this issue that we as Virginians have got to get control of our own economy. I pledge my voice, my vote, and my very being, if necessary, in civil disobedience. I'll stand on the border, if necessary, and say to the federal government, this far and no further.
Thank you, sir. Susan Stimson, your turn to ask a question.
Mine is for Senator Martin, and probably a lot of you don't know his background, but I've had opportunities to sit beside him and hear some of his stories of just some really hard work growing up, particularly struck by when you were very young, your father passed away, and you came back to take care of your mom and your sisters. And I guess I just want to know, how do you think those experiences impacted you and shaped some of the legislation that you've supported and also your career as a legislator here in Virginia?
Thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate that. And Corey, well, I'll drop that. My question was intended to be otherwise, but thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate that. I feel like that my father was really, seemed to be led of God to be preparing me for leadership from the very beginning. When I think back at some of the things that we did with regard to the church and the community and at home. And I appreciated that a good deal more in hindsight than I did at the present time when it happened. But certainly I had to go in and wash dishes for the first 30 seconds in school in 30 minutes in order to eat in the next 30 minutes, and I had to do such things as that. But when it came to the welfare reform debate, I understood it to be something where people were being trapped in a state of government dependence. And President Obama is trying to make it worse, quite frankly, right now, as he redefines work to include journaling. And so it shaped me in a lot of ways in preparation for leadership, but also understanding and caring about those things that really make a difference in people's lives. Thank you.
Pete Snyder, your turn to ask a question.
Question for Scott. Scott, you're a true defender of the Second Amendment. You're an avid hunter. Tell us, we're all running around the trail, busy as can be these days. If you have a day off, what's the perfect hunting day like to you? Walk us through, my friend.
Gosh, what a softball. The perfect hunting day is any day I'm hunting. I started the Sportsman's Caucus down in Richmond several years ago, and it's really important. It's very, very vital. I care a lot about property, if you haven't figured that out. I carried the Bonita bill this year, the property rights bill for small farmers. I care a lot about the outdoors. I care a lot about not only enjoying the outdoors myself, but also for the next generation of kids. Because if we lose this, folks, we're going to look back and we're going to really be disappointed in what we did. We really have to advance outdoors activities for our kids in the next generation, and I'm very committed to doing that. And as your Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to hunt every day I can, believe me, but that probably won't be a lot.
Thank you, sir. E.W. Jackson, you're the final person to ask a question.
Well, my question was originally going to be to Scott, but since he's already gotten one, my question is to Susan Stimson. Susan, and this is really a serious question. I don't mean it tongue-in-cheek, but you've demonstrated such vast... Jean Marie, I meant to say. Jean Marie. You've demonstrated such vast knowledge of the internal workings of our state government. And it's clear that you have a grasp on how it works and what goes on. My question to you is, if you happen not to win the nomination and I do, can I count on you to help me to understand the inner workings of the state government?
It's always my pleasure to mentor anyone who has been elected, and of course I will. And I'd like to take the rest of my time to respond to what Pete said. I think I've earned that right. I invite anyone to look at the minutes for the William and Mary Board of Visitors meeting on December 9th, and you will see that it was a unanimous vote to accept those restrictions. Unanimous. I'm sorry, I'm still talking. And you did go to my husband and other congressmen and ask for direct earmark. And that leads me to something that's so important. I've been honest about where I am on gun rights. I'm a gun owner. I've owned a .357 Magnum and I've owned a Beretta. I support the Second Amendment, and I have a good record of bills that I have killed when I was militia, police, and public safety that Scott would refer to gun-grabbing bills. But I happen to believe that everyone should have an instant background check at a gun show, and I've been honest about that. I think it's very important that your elected officials and those that run are honest, that they give you an honest answer, that they look at you in the eye, and they don't tell you what they know you want to hear, but they tell you where their heart is. We won't agree on everything, but I can tell you this. I'll represent Southwest Virginia because I love Southwest Virginia and I care about all of you.
Thank you. Now, you've each had the opportunity to question some